whenever we. Oh, yeah. Well, you're just leaving me in the void, which is where I belong, but it's also deeply unfair, unjustified.
I love it. We've
really
been combined into one.
Oh, we are
been combined into one.
We've been fused together.
Oh, I love the makeshift Tim and also Hal. That's really good.
Oh, that's really funny. I'm living. Should I start the intro while I'm in the void? Is that what you would like me to do, Mac? I know. I'm well aware.
They're saying hello.
All right. I will start the intro. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the closing ceremony of Slender4Gender 2025. I almost forgot what year it was, which tells you just where my brain is at. We've been doing this. It feels like since we started prepping for like the public facing part of this at the very beginning of the month, that it has been like 20 like 3 weeks of my life, and so it does kind of feel like a year has passed in that way. But welcome back, everyone. For our last outing. We are starting the day and this stream, I believe, and I'm checking the campaign right now to be 100% sure. $7,548 raised for Trans Lifeline. You all have 1 hour remaining on the clock if you would like to donate, maybe a little bit more for the tail end of the closer. We technically do have a donation incentive for $8,000. And it would be very funny to end a Slenderman drive at $8,000. Collected our 8 $1,000 bills, I suppose. That last donation incentive is for our lovely guest Neil to not only write you a crappy pasta, but to perform the crappy pasta on video. So if that's of interest to you, you only have to donate up to 8K, and then we will make sure that happens. Raffle tickets are half price right now. There are contributions from many of the faces you see on stage right now, including 2 books by Laura, and Stan Frederick's jacket from the hit series Stan Frederick BTS. Those are all going to be half price until the end of the run. The Hornetsversary people unlocked that, and I saw it fit to just keep that going. So there is that, of course. The CYOA has wrapped up, so if you want to read the thrilling conclusion, then that is also on the menu. And I think that's all the procedural stuff. Thank you all for a absolutely lovely drive. I'm not closing this out. I'm here to run a panel, so I'm going to stop talking, and the person who's doing the closing, who is Ted Spector, will do the closing for you. Instead, I'm here to introduce a series of 5 guests. There's 5 and I guess 5 and a half. I don't know. They're fused together. I'm not sure how to count them, to be honest.
Yeah, we physically cannot be separated, so you can count us as one person.
Yeah.
Yes. So I have a series of introductions to read out, and I'm going to do that now. So first of all, Valeria Santiago is a filmmaker and art analyst, along with her video essay work in which she discusses art as a tool for creative expression. Apart from pop culture consensus, Val has been a Slenderverse creator for 13 years. Her current series, Red Red Hat, will begin its 2nd arc in the fall of 2025. I'm also joined by Marn. Marn, last name, is a real-life library wizard and online alternate reality game archivist. She hosts the Argonauts podcast, which provides deep dives into finished and indefinitely unfinished ARGs. She also has over a decade of ARG, tabletop, and LARP-adjacent design under her belt, and is always willing to be held under Friend DA if you need a puzzle consultant. I would introduce our lovely guest Neil, but Neil is introduced by themselves, and so any introduction I could give would be redundant, potentially more redundant than the Nick Nocturne introduction several nights ago, which I found out was Leia's fault. So my roommate behind me could screw themselves. Our other fused guest, Tim Lunsford, is an undergraduate in environmental sciences focused on hard geology. In addition to this niche, his heart is in freelance archivist work with her partner through Archive Hornets and organizing and formatting the Slenderverse zine. Also known as Morgan from Witness Truth, often found writing, collaging, or fighting pirated Adobe programs to work right. The other fused guest is Hal. Hal is an undergraduate anthropologist from Georgia studying archival and collection ethics and seeking to refine archival practice. His work concerns the ethical discourse of archival acquisition and body artifacts. He's one of 2 archivists at Archive Hornets, a freelance Marble Hornets archive aggregating both official and fan content from the previous 2 decades, along with his partner, Tim. Besides this, he also voices the character Ethan in the unfiction series Witness Truth, organizes the Slenderverse zine, and draws funny pictures on the computer. And lastly, we have the esteemed Laura E. Hall, who is an artist, writer, puzzle maker, immersive environment, and narrative designer living in Portland, Oregon, where she creates video games, immersive experience, and escape rooms. Hall is the co-founder of Portland's first escape room game company, the award-winning 60 Minutes to Escape, one of the first escape rooms in the U.S., and the author of Katamari Damacy, for Book Fight Books and Planning Your Escape for Simon & Schuster. These are the 2 books that are on the raffle if you want to go throw a ticket in. They are signed. She now creates exciting adventures for the curious at heart with Timberview Productions and Meridian Adventure Co. She proudly serves on the board of Portland Indie Game Squad, Pig Squad. Is it Pig or PIG Squad, actually?
Pig Squad, yeah.
It's Pig Squad, awesome. A nonprofit organization supporting game development and indie game enthusiasts in Portland. And that is our lovely panel on queerness and unfiction. They are from various places. We specifically brought everyone together to be from a very different background while all being able to speak to the same artistic movement in our own ways. So setting us off on our journey, Neil has created a 20-minute video essay. The rest of us, our job here, will be to respond to that video essay in kind, addressing its questions and opening up new ones for you all, the audience, to think about in the intervening year between now and S4G 2026. So,
real quick,
without
I
further
just
ado,
want to say,
go ahead.
I made the video because I didn't think I would be able to make the panel, and then I was able to make the panel, and now I feel very silly. So enjoy me ranting for 20 minutes in my guest bed.
You get to watch yourself, and that's never
How
a
cool is
mortifying
that?
experience. All right. Mad Cat, if you want to switch this over, I will pull it up for the guests who are in the room. Awesome.
Hi, everyone. My name is Neil, and I'm honored to be part of this year's Slender4Gender. First off, thanks to Rain and everyone else at Slender4Gender for not only having me, but being open to a pre-recorded talk. I wish I could join live, and I might be able to at the very end, but it also means that I get to engage in some fun editing techniques. I wanted to open things up with an incredibly annoying but necessary conversation. What is queerness anyway? Whether I like it or not, I'm an academic. I am an assistant professor of fine art at the University of Cincinnati, where I teach courses in both art theory and practice. Even something as universal and ubiquitous as art can be treated as a form of scholarly research, for better or for worse. Part 1. Baby's first queer theory. To start this section off, I go to every gay humanities grad student's favorite person, the late Jose Esteban Munoz. In his most famous work, Cruising Utopia, The Then and There of Queer Futurity, Munoz offers one of the most poignant definitions of queerness to date. In his opening lines, he says, quote, "Queerness is not yet here. Queerness is an ideality. Put another way, we are not yet queer. We may never touch queerness, but we can feel it as the warm illumination of a horizon imbued with potentiality. We have never been queer, yet queerness exists for us as an ideality that can be distilled from the past and used to imagine a future." For those unfamiliar, Munoz's writing is as poetic as it is academic, in that it creates meaning through abstraction. Here, Munoz is starting his book by making a fierce claim that queerness is not something that currently exists, but something that is just out of reach, both in the past and the future. He sets up a metaphor of queerness as the horizon. We can see and document the horizon, we can move towards it, and we can even reach things beyond it, but we can never reach the horizon itself. For the purposes of this essay, Munoz offers a concept of queerness that is an ideal and something to be reached for. It is utopic, a perfection of ourselves, our bodies, and our artwork that is inherently impossible to reach, yet worth reaching towards. A few bits of cultural context to help explain his standpoint. This was originally written and published in 2009, which is the same year that Slenderman was created. I like to think that Munoz knew that Slenderman existed. But more importantly, this was a book-long response to Lee Edelman's own queer theory polemic, No Future, Queer Theory and the Death Drive, published in 2004. We don't have time to dive into Edelman and what is called the anti-social turn of queer theory in the 90s and early 2000s, but to be brief, Munoz challenges Edelman's assertion that queerness is antithetical to the future because, according to Edelman, to be queer is to have no future. In Edelman's eyes, queerness is counter to what he deems the child, a normative archetype of heteroculture that conservatives are always manifesting when creating regressive legislations and policies.
Won't somebody please think of the children?
Munoz, on the other hand, argues that queerness is inherently about the future, and that is especially the case for queer people of color who require a sense of futurism and utopic hope in order to survive and imagine a better future. It's much more complicated than that, but it's important to acknowledge context, especially when riffing off of what is effectively a book-length clapback to another theorist. All of this preamble to say, queerness is a possibility. If heterosociety is one full of structures and expectations, then queerness defies that by arguing there are no structures, or that they have no meaning to us. Unlike heterosociety, which has set timelines of expectations like going to college, getting married, having children, and so on, queerness exists in the future and past, and allows for wiggle room in the present. Queerness looks at the structure, says, no thank you, and breaks it down for parts to create something new. So then, all of that put out there, how does queerness relate to unfiction? For the sake of brevity, I'm just going to steal a definition from Nick Nocturne in his 2020 video on the subject.
A form of fictional storytelling that utilizes varying measures of interaction, immersion, or multimedia delivery beyond the traditional bounds of the mediums used to conduct an experience under the role-playing premise. This is not a game.
There's something in that definition that screams out to me that will be the basis for the rest of this essay, beyond the traditional bounds. Given our definition of queerness is a form of boundary and structure breaking, could this mean that all unfiction is inherently a form of queer storytelling? Perhaps. Let's unpack that a bit. Part 2. Queerness as a challenge. Inherent to queerness is the resistance to definition and being held down in one place for too long. Much like how the word queer itself was once a slur and can still be used as one in certain contexts, it ebbs and flows in and out of our grasp. Yet, one thing seems to remain a constant. Queerness is when things thought to be inherent to human life are intentionally challenged. Whether that is who one loves, what one does with their body, or how one structures their life. What is queer in one decade may become normalized in the next, but the challenge of queerness will persist to something new. It truly is the horizon that can be seen from both sides, past and future, yet never fully present. As such, if we were to dissect the concept of queerness within unfiction, we would first need to create the underlying structure that unfiction lives within. Unfiction itself can be seen as a queer form of storytelling in that it eschews traditional structures of narrative through transmedia and interactive approaches. Yet, I argue this is a similar case to rectangles and squares. Unfiction may be a queer form of storytelling, like all squares are rectangles, but not all unfiction itself is queer, like how not all rectangles are squares. Let's first consider the simplest way queerness can exist in a story, through a queer character or creator. Queerness can make itself known as a part of a narrative through the identities of its characters or its creator. Yet, simply identifying as queer wouldn't be enough to push the narrative into the world of being a queer story. Remember, our definition of queerness orbits around structure. So while the actions of characters might be queer in the context of the world we live in, if the structure of their narrative follows rigid storytelling conventions, it might not make sense to call the work itself queer. Consider the amount of theoretically queer characters that Disney has introduced in recent years. Does LaFoe dancing with another man for all of 5 seconds at the end of the live-action Beauty and the Beast make it a queer film, or even that a queer moment? What about the Cyclops lady from Onward? For the identity of the creator or character to make the work queer, it would have to be integral to the story in some way, shape, or form, beyond being a story beat or element of an arc. If we're staying in the world of conventional film, one could argue Dean DeBlas' How to Train a Dragon falls into the category of a queer work that is made queer by the identity of its creator meshing with the content of the film. Throughout the story, Hiccup bucks the centuries-old tradition of dragons and humans being segregated, is disowned by his family once he is forcibly outed as a dragon lover, and at the end, dragons and humans integrate themselves into seemingly chosen familial relationships, not bound by blood, but by affinity. DeBlas' identity as a gay man probably wasn't crucial to reading queerness into the film, but it certainly adds a layer of authenticity and credibility to this take. And an incredible example of both queer storytelling and queer-centric narrative comes in one of my favorite pieces of unfiction, Daisy Brown. Not only does it have an underlying essence of queerness through its camp aesthetics and Daisy herself existing in an unconventional manner, but the narrative itself also heavily invests in queer ways of storytelling. It is crucial to utilize YouTube's captions while watching this series, as creator Jules Dapper injected meta-narrative content in legible ways through the captions. This metatext sometimes offers inaudible responses to Daisy's monologues, creating a voice and text dialogue in the process. Other times, it creates a form of time travel by giving the viewer insight into conversations between characters occurring in the past. Daisy had a Twitter account that posted between episodes and offered direct interaction between viewer and character, but to me that was an auxiliary form of queer narrative that supplemented the overall story and was not a necessity like the captions are. Alternatively, the way that The Sun Vanished utilized Twitter, especially in its early days, to both tell its stories and interact with the audience, to the point of audience choice dictating where the narrative went through polls, captures the ephemerality of queerness as being not here. Contemporary audiences may read the posts, look at the images, watch the videos, and so on, but the interactive quality of the story is now gone. Completely divorced from queerness in content and presumably creator, Everyman Hybrid's Habit Made Me Do It arc required audience participation in order to further the narrative. Similarly, Jeffiat's 10 tapes incorporated viewer interaction to both advance the story and even determine its ending. Side note, I'll be the first to admit I don't know if anyone on the EMH crew or Jeffiat are queer, but Vinny, if you're seeing this, I think you're cute and you should say hi. All that in mind, it becomes clear that queerness may indeed be an inherent aspect of unfiction, making all unfiction queer. Hi, I'm Mary Mary, more like, hi, I'm very lesbian. Ben Drowned, more like, Ben crowned the next drag superstar. This is not a game, more like, this is totally and completely a gay. Yet, it only takes a few steps down this slippery slope to see how this approach to queerness in unfiction might be a tad problematic. And not in the everyone is canceled way, but rather in the saying a word over and over again until it loses meaning way. Part 3. Challenging the existence of queerness. In 2016, I picked up the freshly published nonfiction title, The Estrangement Principle, by artist and writer Ariel Goldberg. In it, they grapple with the term queer as it relates to art, questioning its validity and usage in an increasingly commercial-centric pride world. Quote, queer, in relation to art, constantly reinvents itself. Loosely aligned with a range of identity positions counter to mass culture, queer resembles an umbrella one buys that falls apart shortly after a rainstorm. Anything can be interpreted and argued for as queer. It can be quick to see how the result of queerness's slipperiness can be just as much a hindrance as it is a strength. It's like in The Incredibles when Syndrome wants to make superpowered gadgets widespread so that anyone can be a superhero. If everything is queer, then nothing is queer. Returning to a previous example, How to Train Your Dragon can just as easily be argued as not queer because of its mainstream status as a film, its lack of actual queer characters, and the standard Bildungsroman or hero's journey that the story is structured around. Later in the same chapter, Goldberg continues to pick at the label queer and the damned if you do, damned if you don't situations artists have gotten themselves into. After listing their varied identities and terms they describe themselves with, they say, quote, "Labels function as a starting point from which to disentangle myself and also to outline the limitations of my perspectives. Sometimes all these perspectives cram into the suitcase of queer. But I struggle with using just one word. Queer has proliferated in usage, all the while aggregating divergent histories. Labeling art and writing queer affirms the power of those who are consistently silenced. The decision not to label art and writing queer could arguably be arrived at through the same exact motivations. Here we see the problem with a term like queer being ever shifting and nebulous. It can be used to simultaneously strengthen and weaken the impact of a work by either connecting it to a vast and diverse history of past queer creations or limiting its potential by cramming it into a monolithic concept that changes based on context. We've talked a bit about queerness as it relates to time, but queerness can even shift in meaning through contemporaneous cultural differences. Western concepts of a strict gender binary are often bucked in non-Western cultures, especially indigenous cultures of the Americas and Polynesia. In modern-day Ghana, kente cloth was not traditionally woven by women but men, despite textiles and craft being heavily gendered feminine in Western culture. All this to say, does queerness even exist? If queerness is constantly shifting in meaning based on context through time and culture, how can we adequately claim something to be queer? Part 4. A conclusion. Before writing this up, I was working on my annual performance review, which occurred after recording but before editing this, so I'm just going to put how it went here. In academia, it's a way of justifying our values to the university by telling them how much we did in the last year, but also an incredibly useful process where I get to reflect on my goals and plans. This last year in particular has been full of contradictions and difficulty, leading me to splitting myself into multiple personas or identities where I practice. When trying to describe this in my pre-review paperwork, I ended up writing the following. As my work has always been in conversation with the elusive nature of queerness, it only makes sense to take on different personas when making. Queerness defies definition and understanding. It is liminal and possibly utopic. Thus, a queer practice speaks in coded language that ebbs in and out of legibility and understanding. And here's where I make everyone mad at me with the hottest of takes. In many ways, there is nothing inherently queer about Slender Man and the communal nature of his creation.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
Let me explain myself. In her 2013 essay, The Anatomy of a Monster, The Case of Slender Man, Dr. Tina Boyer analyzes the creation of Slender Man within the methodology of medieval legends. She offers a unique perspective. While his creation splintered off into a multifaceted mythos from multiple creators and vantage points, the actual process in which he was made is nothing new beyond the use of the Something Awful forums. Quote, "In terms of legend making and oral tradition, social networks have become a focal point of sharing traditional folklore and myth patterns. The shift from oral storytelling to the internet forms of writing, blogging, and videotaping is intriguing because it shows no difference in dynamic. The creation of Slender Man has proved that legend making and telling, even without the direct oral link, obey the same rules of performativity, critique, embellishment, and progression as they do in the oral telling of a story. The audience and the primary story creator share the legend as a performance to stage their ideas of reality and normative social expectations within a construct of bizarre and preternatural circumstances. The only major difference between the traditional legend-making practices of Boyer's historical research and Slender Man is the speed at which his story spread and altered, which can be attributed to the digital nature of his origin. In most other aspects, Slender Man is a typical monster like the European legends that came before him. He's no different from Celtic black dogs or lycanthropes or dragons or other mythical creatures. But if there's one thing I hope you take away from my definition of queerness, it's this. Multiple things can be simultaneously true, even ideas that seem to contradict each other. We must acknowledge the fact that despite everything I just argued, There's something a little queer about Slender Man. He is the physical embodiment of the uncanny nature of the internet, its ability to simultaneously connect people and segregate them, the pleasures and dangers that are possible, the familiar yet strangeness of becoming intimately familiar with another person you've never met. How is that not Grindr? The platform utilizes a silhouette for profiles without photos, an uncanny representation of a body that is both absent and present. Queer people have embraced the internet to connect with one another, especially when IRL connection is prohibited by geography, culture, or other factors. Yet, there is also an inherent implication that the person one is connecting to is not who or what they say they are. It comes as no surprise that, regardless of intention and the inherent gendering of the slender man, that queer people would latch onto his essence as a form of liminality. We see a part of ourselves in the way that he is depicted as unknowable, how he cannot be properly documented in photographs or videos as if he cannot be fully captured in a single image, how he instills a sense of wonder and fear in others. There's no queerness within the Slender Man. There is nothing but queerness within the Slender Man. To fully conclude, what makes a thing queer? My argument emphasizes the lack of inherent meaning within the thing, and rather the context surrounding the thing and how the thing does or does not fit within that context is what makes it queer. Put another way, queer is as much a verb as it is an adjective. To make something queer requires action, intention, and purpose. Queerness can also happen implicitly, of course. In many cases, creators may struggle to not create queer things, as it is inherent in their being. I like to think of myself as such a creator, yet I cannot deny there are plenty of moments where my work falls into structures and systems set before me. Unlike other forms of storytelling, unfiction creates active opportunities for queerness to thrive because it is inherently a boundary-breaking and genre-defying form of storytelling. It offers avenues for explorations of queerness that traditional media requires extra effort to capture. Queerness in media is the result of its creator actively seeking to distill experiences from the past to speak towards the future. Queerness is evident in media that demands more from its viewer than static observation. If you want to make something queer, you must first take the risk in demanding more from your audience than other creators. Thank you.
Wow.
Whoopee!
Whoopee.
Wow.
Well, yeah. Wow. Immediately right into the floor. There we go. I guess, like, I since you're here, Neil, you can give any parting thoughts you might have on the tail end of that as a place to start.
I had such a wonderful time watching the face journeys of people watching. And I'm happy that my jokes worked out. And also, Vinny, if you're out there, shooting my shot. I am married but polyamorous, so what's up? How you doing?
I hope that happens
yeah.
for you. Fingers crossed.
Really, this whole thing is just an elaborate way for you to get a message to Vinny, and the rest of the panel can go suck an egg.
Man.
Yes,
exactly.
dating show.
Imagining a version of the Grindr logo, but it's just 3 tentacles.
Cool.
Putting that thought away.
There's a market for it, but
Putting that away. So the first thing I want to say is that if you guys have initial reactions or things you want to bring up, having just watched that, or places you feel like your work hooks in, I'd rather start with where you want to start than with the questions that I have laid out before us. So floor is open. If in previous panels, also as a kind of a practice that we do in our developer meetings, there is a sound on the Discord soundboard that is a quack. And so if you feel the need to talk but don't want to interrupt somebody and want to be next, you can hit the quack, and then I'll direct from there. We're using your quack. All right. There you go. So whoever would like to start, if there is anyone who would like to start, go ahead. If not, I will pick questions up.
I'd love to go because the observations that I have are actually questions that I'd like to ask of my fellow panelists also. I'll reintroduce myself. My name is Laura E. Hall, and my involvement with unfiction and ARGs actually comes from unfiction.com in the heyday of I Love Bees and Perplexity. And so recently I've been working on an archival project, the Center for Immersive Arts. The first major thing that we did was to release an archived version of the Unfiction Forum. So it's all, for me, very much about like the origins of the genre and like the question of queerness is very relevant, I think, to archiving in that space, because it's like all of these definitions and trying to pin down stories and trying to represent something that is like inherently ephemeral in a way that now translates to people's understanding today is so complex. I would actually really like to like put this to the archivists on the panel too. Like, how do you tackle that challenge of like telling these stories now about what had happened when, you know, in the case of the stuff that I'm interested in, it's all this deprecated technology and Flash that doesn't exist anymore, and websites that are gone, and forums that have disappeared. You know, so you're really piecing something together, and it's like a puzzle in itself now to like recreate that for people to understand it.
Yeah, I would say that we have encountered that quite extensively because the comprehensive fandom history of Marble Hornets is so piecemeal. And with
Yeah.
the death of Flash and with the sort of slow decay of unfiction, you're losing so much vital history and
Oh
context.
yeah.
So you wind up with these really sort of abstracted terms and ideas, or these ubiquitous concepts like for anyone in the audience familiar with Krilly, like
Or
where does Krilly derive its
and
origins?
it's like, you know, kids these days don't even know about the doozy. So it's like we want to bring that to people, like at least a fraction of like what you get when you watch it when you come across it on YouTube in 2011 and you're like, what is this real? Guys, I'm scared. Like it's been really fun to, choose what we want to remind people is out there and also what we choose to not archive. Because it's a lot of going through a blog that is weird and it's like Game of Thrones gifs and like um I think like it's so interesting to watch how people like interact with a piece of media in the past decade and how much it's shifted. Um yeah.
I think a really interesting observation to make is, and I don't actually really know how to go about breaking it down, but the post DashCon fandom culture on Tumblr was profoundly different to how it existed in its former state. And I believe with it, a lot of the sort of candor of being a fan who is unabashedly proud of the thing that you love and wanting to create as much content for it as humanly possible. I believe a lot of that sort of went down a steep decline, and you really see that transformation taking place as you're going through the history of this fandom, because what you're beginning with is a lot of very earnest, and a caveat, the earnestness, it is still prevalent. It is oh so prevalent. There are people who love Marble Hornets so deeply, and it is wonderful to see as someone who has been into it for the past um
Forever.
decade and a half. And but that being said, it's such an interesting observation going back through what are, to us now, very intimate pieces of insight into the lives of people who may no longer even be on the internet at all, who may have entirely put these interests behind them, or who may, they may resurface and return to them. But as I encounter in my professional archival work, it's taking that piecemeal history and attempting to make an informed judgment about what it is we believe to have been the case at the time, or taking what scraps we have and piecing them together in such a way that they almost form like a comprehensive image. Um, and I could talk at length about the history of queer fans within the Marble Hornets fandom, but I also don't want to just delve into a tirade about that at this point in
Can
time.
you tell we love archiving?
Yeah.
the like post DashCon Tumblr thing is something I've never thought about before, but I think that you're so right because some of my like white whale things that I want to cover on Argonauts are like args from Tumblr in that post DashCon era that don't exist anymore because either like
Yeah.
all of the fan blogs for them like got deleted or like changed their URLs or whatever, or the original blogs for them got like wiped. And so it's like it's really interesting that like I remember them in my mind, but I've like reached out to the creators and they were like, "Oh yeah, I don't have any of that anymore. Like I can't help you because I just like don't have it."
One I'm gonna pull on an ancient text here, and I think that this is something that directly tied into the death of earnest fandom culture as we knew it in its sort of like super Hulock, supernatural GIF posting days. If you recall the All or Nothing Indiegogo campaign, the pitch
Oh, yep.
was for a series about a pansexual and an asexual person being roommates. It was a single post with a single drawing, and it raised several $1,000s, and that several $1,000s disappeared and no series was ever conceived of. And the person who actually was culpable in that situation did come forward, and it was a very complicated situation. But that being said, that sort of thing really soured people's opinion of Tumblr and the internet culture of, you know, sort of starting something up and doing it yourself. And it also really killed off a lot of that raw enthusiasm that you see looking back at things circa, you know, 2012, 2013. Because people were beginning to, as the internet was growing more serious, as it was becoming more corporatized, people's willingness to be so vulnerably exposed and excited about these things was sort of being pushed to the wayside. Um, and obviously earnest fandom culture lives on. It would be completely ignorant to imply that, you know, oh, people just stopped liking things honestly, because that's completely untrue. If you've ever been 13, or even if you've ever been any age at all on the internet and had an interest that you've loved, you've probably encountered that. Um, but I that's the fun of archiving, is going back into that deep history, digging through and slogging through all of the, you know, what has become incomprehensible and making it comprehensible by reaching into the past, examining these lives, the lives of people who may no longer be on the internet, who may now be married with children, and attempting to use their perspectives as a framework to understand a fandom, not necessarily as an insular thing, but as like a wider cultural phenomenon, if that makes any sense, is using these things to sort of get a broader perspective on the internet at the time and the nature of media at the time and independent media at the time particularly. And it's all very interesting, you know. Working with Archive Hornets was actually what drove me to pursue archival work professionally, and I think that it's something very cool.
To kind of chime in on this, because I have my own thoughts and I can't help myself. I'm sorry.
You do.
It's I think the principal question that makes the archival of unfiction complicated, and this is on a technical level, it's also on a theoretical level, is, you know, what are you actually archiving, right? Like that's the question that haunts my dreams. Is, are we talking about do we want to get at what it was like to experience the media itself? So are we trying to get experiential with what we're recording? Are we trying to capture the alternate world if we're dealing with an alternate reality game, or are we trying to capture the folkloric if we're talking about something like Slender Man, and like truly capture that? So, you know, not just record the objects or material that necessarily relate to it, but the feeling itself, right? The thing that exists just beyond the thing. Those are harder things to grab than just the ephemera themselves. Not that the ephemera, that for the audience who may not be super familiar with the term, like these are the web pages that disappear, or they're the, you know, the photos of intimate spaces that are pulled off the web because they are, you know, actually in a web culture that's moved away from being you know, totally anonymous to being very unanonymous to being more anonymous again, and they've kind of become a faux pas in one way or another, or whatever else. You know, even beyond those, the theoretical questions are they change the shape of the archive itself. And so,
Yeah.
like, to tee this back around to the queerness discussion, there's a question to be had about whether or not, because alternate reality games, because fiction are often are often world-making projects in alterity. They're imagining other worlds. They're imagining sometimes other futures. If we're talking about like World Without Oil, we're talking about the game's name has escaped me. Well, hell, even Frog Fractions 2 is imagining a alternate world in one way or another kind of future. Although maybe not what anyone would ever want to live in. It's a there's a question of whether that itself, like the idea of what happens when you try and produce an alternate world for people to exist in, if that itself has an element of queerness deeply embedded in it.
I would go so far as to say that it does. I would very much agree. And I think what you said about attempting to archive the sort of intangible, I guess you could call it, that really is the struggle of attempting to catalog these pieces of media, because one particular thing that we run into a lot is media decay or general loss, be it literal in the form of like images becoming so compressed as to lose data, or something like the death of Flash, leading to the inaccessibility of personal websites or a lot of Flash dependent programs. So we're viewing things outside of their intended context 10, 15 years after their original conception, potentially with critical information having been lost, and it is extremely difficult to then try and piece together a history made up of these things which have been sort of severed from their original format, or they've lost intention. And I think that's something that's very interesting, because that could also be a reflection on just the nature of archiving things having to do with the queer community. You really do witness a loss in terms of we forget what things mean, we lose original context, we lose the creators themselves in many instances. Um and so it's like, how do you capture a world that does not exist, that existed within a specific context, making use of specific materials, many of which are lost? And that's something that you can relate to archiving queer history. How do you make sense of the past when so much of it is now inaccessible to you as a modern consumer or a modern archivist?
I do have an anecdote about queerness. Um, and I'm going to try to relate it back eloquently, but we'll see how it goes. So I met Alison Bechtel at a panel in SMU, and I asked her about, community infighting, because she was talking about, this was right after the election and stuff, and people were very, there was a tension, and I talked to her about, like, do you think this is finally the thing that's going to make people stop fighting with each other and bickering about all of this stuff? And she was literally like, we were trying to fight to stay alive, so that was why we weren't, arguing about identities and stuff. And I feel like that's really present in the past unfiction fandoms, where it's like we're all but it's like we're all having fun. We're all having fun and we're not worrying about it. This thing is ongoing. And now that it's gone and it's over, it's like it's interesting to see how much like people talk about like unfiction series now that they're complete versus not having the full picture. That is honestly my favorite part of archiving, is hearing people be like, is it going to be Brian's head in the safe? And I'm like, oh, they don't even know. Like,
Yeah, that's a really fun part of it, is looking back as someone now with all of the pieces in place and seeing people's ruminations at the time on any matter really,
yeah.
is just like, wow, sort of the perspective that you formed from the information that was given to you is fascinating, and we want to preserve those perspectives even as they may no longer be accurate, because that's the importance of archiving, is attempting to aggregate as much information reasonably, and respecting the privacy of individuals, of course. But that yeah um
I'm gonna
I
step in
think
here and just
yes.
tag Val. So, Val, you in particular work heavily with the Slender Woman as opposed to the Slender
Yes.
Man. And in particular, I'd love to get your take on this idea of the Slender Man as queer and not queer, always at the same time, in as it relates to the Slender Woman as a separate entity.
I really enjoyed the approach to context being what defines the Slender Man specifically as queer or not queer. I love the idea that the creation of the character is almost obviously inherently like non-queer feeling, but I do think that the things that were done with him after the fact, after it got out of Victor Surge's hands and even out of the creators of Marble Hornets' hands and splintered off into all of these different types of stories, that it kind of inherently could not help but become queer. And in relation to Slender Woman, that was just my personal addition to it. Like the version of myself that I had injected into like my Slenderverse story. Like I wanted to bring like my personal queerness, I guess, my trans experience to something that I had experienced for 13 years prior. Like I've been very like my expertise is very rigid. Like I only really know Slenderverse and maybe some ARG stuff outside of that, but my focus has always just been in how like my experience with the Slender Man has changed over the past 13 years and how much I've seen it be not just spread to, but like shared among other creators that were also queer and trans. And I have no idea if I'm answering your question at this point, but I'm very much I don't know, like my experience with Slender Woman in particular is that it is itself textually at least like a queer thing. Like it is on at the very least on the surface a queer thing. Because I had taken it and I had gender bent the character in order to metaphorically fit with my themes of dysphoria and talking about, a lot of like personal trans stuff in my series. Yeah.
It feels like a very natural progression of the Slender Man, like the Slenderverse in general, to just get more and more queer and snowball in such a way, like, you know.
I always thought it was really. I mean, my Slender Woman's design. I'm not the first person to do a Slender Woman in a Slenderverse work. There was a series that had come out about 10 years ago, 12 years ago, called The Origin Files, and they were the ones that did the original Slender Woman design. In that series, there were two versions. There was a Slender Man and a Slender Woman, and they were separate entities. And I remember when I started Red Hat, I remembered that version of the character, and I remembered the writing for Slender Woman in that series specifically just felt very rigid in what the character meant and what that was going to in Origin Files, and I wanted my Slender Woman to mean something more particular to my experience as a trans person, and so I specifically changed that. Like it wasn't just a gender bent Slender Man on the surface where it was just like same thing, Slender Woman shows up, distortion occurs, people get hurt. No, this one specifically appears in the distance. And whenever my character experiences dysphoria, Slender Woman would become Slender Man and get a lot closer and more aggressive. And the mechanic of that informs the danger. Like, that's what I wanted. I wanted the Slender Woman to be overall this harmless thing in the distance that my character sort of wistfully aspires to, sees in the distance, can never quite reach, feels like she can't quite reach. And the Slender Man element of it to suddenly feel twice as aggressive as he could in any other Slender Man story, because there's the added layer of the dysphoria adding to that.
Neil, you quacked.
I sure did. Val, something you said about like the way that you described how Slender Man was created as this like straight thing, and then queer people were like yoink, is like it echoes perfectly what Susan Sontag was saying in Notes on Camp. Like, yeah. Perfectly. Like, it is literally what we do. We see something that straight people make, and we're like, we can do that better, actually, because you don't realize how interesting the thing you made is. And, like, as an educator, I deal with that all the time, too, where in class, a student will make something and be like, I don't know about it. And it's, like, got the weirdest thing ever in it. I'm just like, this is so cool. You need to, like, stop everything you're doing and just do more of that, because it's so cool. Like, they don't know. Like, the straights don't know what they got. And then it takes us, with our elevated sensibilities,
so
John Waters.
it's so wonderful too, because like it's not just I do take the point that it is also about breaking like those standard conventions, but also just the ways in which we work within those conventions that is like things I haven't seen. Like Red Hat, for example, and I'm gonna probably be just going back to my thing a lot. So prepare yourselves. I'm so sorry. Red Hat, like in particular, like has a pretty standard narrative structure, I would say. Like there's, like it almost pretty much follows Hero with a Thousand Faces, like down to the detail. But like I just feel like with the elements surrounding it, like the textual queerness, the subtextual queerness, all of that stuff being a part of the story, it changes the ways in which the narrative stuff works. I guess it's not the same. There is a queerness even to that, even to the traditional the use of traditional things. Yeah.
And I think that speaks to one of the points that you were making in the video essay, which is like challenging people to hold complex ideas in their mind is also inherently queer, and also the whole idea of unfiction. I mean, again, to draw from the history of it, and to go back, there's the idea of like IG and OOG. I don't even know if people still use those terms today, but to be able to hold space for the idea that like you have an awareness of yourself in the game world, an awareness of what is happening out of the game. So you might like look at a website registration and understand that that's OOG, but you're still participating in the world of the game. Like it's part of the structure to be able to allow for lots of layers of knowing and meaning, and to be able to slip in and out and between them. That's what drew me to the genre anyway. But I would love to know what you all think too about like challenging people to have complex understanding within the genre.
It has been really interesting to do like so for Argonauts we do basically a different arg every episode, and it's been really interesting to kind of like do a big overview and see that like there are ARGs that you can read your own kind of like queer interpretations into. Like I Love Bees, you can easily be like, oh, it's about like this consciousness that like doesn't really understand who she is and like how she got where she is. And there are arcs that have like queer characters, but it's not really about their experience as queer characters. It's like this character is a lesbian and something is happening to her. We're not like it doesn't matter that she's a girlfriend. And then there are like arcs that are pretty intrinsically, I would say, tied into the queer experience of the people who made it, like Red Hat, like Sky Technologies, which I talk about a lot on Argonauts, which was about it was an arc that some game designer friends of mine ran about artificial like intelligences sort of breaking free of this corporate presence and like figuring out physically what they wanted to look like and who they were. And it was like one of the most meaningful ARGs I've ever been a part of. And like I think there is this really interesting spectrum of like creators making art that you can read queer meanings into, all the way to queer creators putting their whole selves into their art, and like you can learn a lot about like them and their personal experience, and it just has like a very like layered meaning to it that I think is really interesting.
I will be the first to make the bold claim that there are many queer people who enjoy the Slender Man mythos. I think this is not spoken for. That being said, all jokes aside, someone in chat brought up the way that Slenderman is also used as a metaphor for mental illness and trauma, and I think that is a fantastic point to raise, because it would be foolish to imply that there is no interrelation between the queer experience and trauma as well as mental illness. And I think that I'm unfortunately gonna relate it back to Marble Hornets, because that is what we do.
It's our specialty.
That's our specialty. That is the specific thing that we both are dedicated to. And without divulging too much, I do think that there is a reason people so often tend to resonate with the experience of characters like Tim, because there is such a layeredness to the portrayal of mental illness in Slenderverse. Obviously, there are certain portrayals which are less savory and others which are really skillful, as seen in Marble Hornets, I believe executes it very well. Um, and I think a queer reading isn't necessarily unwarranted because it's the idea that suffering, or the even lived or lifelong suffering that never really lets up, can still give way to finding contentment or finding peace within yourself, or finding ways in which your life could be better. And obviously the end of Marble Hornets is pretty ambiguous. You're sort of left with a feeling that perhaps no, everything is not fine. And obviously it very technically is not, but you still understand that there is hope. And I think now, in a time of such disparity for a lot of queer people, particularly living in countries where your identity is constantly being subjected to critique, if not outright subjugation, by certain powers, it can be really wonderful to look into a piece of media that maybe wasn't intended to be read as queer or even queer coded at all, but still having the ability to come away with a queer interpretation, and one that suggests that maybe there is a way out of this, or maybe even if there isn't a way out of it, there is a way to thrive despite the circumstances at hand, and maybe that mental illness isn't like a death sentence for the rest of your life. There are still joys to be found, even in suffering, and even in suffering, there is still stories worth being told. And I think Slender Man, as he exists as sort of a blank slate, that's kind of worth assessing, because it's like, is he really a blank slate at all? But I think as a character or as a concept, he is so ripe with opportunities for examining, like, or he's just a great vehicle for so many different kinds of lived experiences, be it queerness, be it mental illness. I I'm sure you could develop so many different kinds of readings that we would be truly challenged to list them all in one sitting, but
We can summarize by something is wrong.
something is
When he
wrong.
shows up, something is
Something
probably
is
wrong.
bad, and you don't want it to happen. You don't
Yeah.
want to see him. However, there's still a story being told that's worth examining, and perhaps within that story there is a glimmer of hope, or joy, or resistance.
Sometimes.
And
There's
the
a way to
resistance can be
tie
very
these
deep.
two ideas together, I think, and under the premise of specifically, like, one, you have monsters like, say, the Slender Man, that are existing in this place between, because they're unfictional, because they are living in the world where we're talking about them, not necessarily under the breadth of folklore, unless we are, specifically looking at them that way. But I mean, the community has labeled itself unfiction, not unfolklore. So we are always talking about these things in terms of their narrative. And so the monster itself is always policing the boundary. And I'll just say, frankly, I'm pulling this from Seven Theses. So, like, you should get the author and I'll just give it to you. But, you know, uh, the monster is always policing the boundary between the fictional and the real. And then we also have what you were bringing up, Laura, which is like this ability that unfiction and ARGs provide us to step outside of not just our reality, but ourselves, right? You are able to play this character who is not an avatar, but is also not you. And so you end up in this position. I think Sita Poppet calls it, when she's talking about VR, not me. So, I'm still Rain Dalton in the ARG, but I'm not the Rain Dalton that is the person who's running this panel right now. I am another Rain Dalton who's not me. And so you are also balancing in your hands these two identities of the fictive and the real, and sometimes blending the two, I think, really closely. To go back to Slenderman's theories, because we're on Slender4Gender, there's this tendency I've noticed in Slenderverse creators, and I've noticed this in myself as I'm developing a series, to blend the character's personality and abilities and things like that and their circumstances with my current life experience. And so it becomes this kind of weird interplay of live action role play and traditional writing. And maybe that's just the case for everything, and that's just overstating the amount, or maybe it just puts a finer point on how much of ourselves end up in the things that we make as artists. But specifically, I guess you know, and this comes up in TTRPG studies, so not a new idea. But is it that ARGs and is it that unfiction provide a space for queer people to discover themselves and discover what haunts them in a way that is explicit because they're chasing the line between what is real and what is not?
I was actually gonna say I have kind of like noticed a trend in a lot of my friends who are more on the tabletop side of gaming, which is that like when they play an ARG, a lot of times they will go in fully like, okay, I'm playing a character with my name, but like maybe I like have a different job and I'm just gonna like make up a character to get what I want out of these NPCs or like this situation. And it's really interesting coming from the older culture of like, this is not a game, I am playing myself, I am like actually getting involved in this thing. And it's very interesting to like have now been exposed to a culture of people who are like, actually, I'm not going to play myself, I'm going to like mess around in this space and like see who I can become to like solve this mystery.
I have so many thoughts. I'm trying to figure out which one of them I want to weigh in with the most.
Yeah, basically.
What sort of ranking them in order of personal importance. I think you are entirely correct in that these altered states, I guess you could call them altered realities, these alternate realities, if you will, are a fantastic medium for uh exploration of the self and like the multiplicity of the self, because um I play a guy on Witness Truth who's kind of just me,
Yeah.
and that's my bad because I tend to kind of go back to one kind of character, but that's honestly because I love to do it. But like, in the case of D&D, I do play a lot of D&D. I'm a big fan of TTRPGs. I never want to play myself. I always want to explore the various different kinds of person that I could choose to be, or persons that are entirely unfamiliar to me, really try to just like rocket myself to the other end of the spectrum and see how it feels. And I think role play in that way, be it in the form of unfiction, be it for TTRPGs, or just straight up role play as a lot of people experience it, written or live action, is a really great way of
Just learning about yourself.
yeah, determining oneself. I found out I was trans because I role played Marble Hornets when I was a preteen, and I was like, wow, it feels weirdly comforting to think of myself as being a man.
Many
And
such cases.
of course, that spiraled on, and I became an adult, and I was like, oh god, oh god. But I and I'm seeing a lot of people who are echoing that very same experience. So there's this inherent queerness to the ARG and unfiction community simply because these are really great ways of engaging with versions of yourself
that are below the surface.
yeah, that are either below the surface or which you are just interested to try. And yes, rack 'em up, Tim Sutton. I am one of the countless thousands of transgender people affected by oh, that fictional character sure is cool, I hope they don't mind if I take their name, which has led me to being the person I am today. But I really do, I think that it's neat, and I think that they provide such a meaningful avenue for people to explore and to be outside of themselves, sometimes to be like themselves or to be something radically different, because that leads to having such a got a quack, having such a deepened understanding of who you are, who you'd like to be.
Sorry, I didn't mean for my quack to be so hurtful. Not hurtful, but anyway.
No, hurtful at all. I think I didn't mean
distracting.
to verbalize it.
No, so what we're talking about right now is beautifully, beautifully described in, I want to say, the first chapter of Glitch Feminism, a manifesto by Legacy Russell, where she is talking, God, it's such a good book, and I cannot wait to read her next book, which just came out. It's called Black Meme.
I'm screaming, it's such a good book right now at my mic, so I'm turning the mic on to tell you I agree, it's such a good book.
But in it, she talks about, like, very, very early on in, like, the introduction, she talks about literally this experience of, as a 30-something millennial now, going online and literally role-playing by entering AIM chat rooms as these different personas. And as a result, she was able to literally put on these different characters, where one day she could be a white girl from the Midwest, and then she could go back to her lived experience of this black black queer girl living and growing up in the East Village during its, like, major gentrification era. So yeah, Glitch Feminism, fantastic book, but, like, all of this is being said in that, and it's really interesting to me that it's like, oh yeah, unfiction is kind of like, now for us in the 2020s and even the 2010s and before, is like that experience of when I was a child, a literal child, in these, like, chat rooms, pretending to be something that I wasn't, telling people I was a college student and spelling college wrong.
Of course.
And it's like, oh, unfiction and, like, ARGs and, like, the ability to play these characters do that. Last thing real quick, in my own series, which I don't want to talk too much about, I think I accidentally am too much of myself because I am literally Neil, this professor at the University of Cincinnati who's doing this thing. Like, I am literally me. But that was the point. Like, I wanted to see how far I could, like, really blur the line between fiction and unfiction, to the point where I wanted my colleagues to be concerned about me, honestly.
Of
But
course.
nobody paid attention to it because, like, 3 people have seen my series, and none of them are my colleagues. But like, that was probably actually a mistake in a lot of ways, because literally people stumble upon my series and they're like, this is just some nerd talking about these, like, gay dudes in the 19th century. Like, that sounds interesting, but I don't care. Where's the pink monster? Where does that come in? It's like, well, you got to get to episode 10. I promise it's there. So, like, I don't know, maybe I should have role-played a little bit more. Maybe I should have created more of a persona. And now I'm, like, starting to do that. So yeah, those were my thoughts.
I had to go and look for it, but I wanted to bring up a particular paper because I briefly, in my freshman year of college, toyed around with the concept of writing a paper about altered identities experienced through MMOs, which is something that I deeply love to discuss because they provide a super fertile context for exploring yourself. The paper, The Ideal Elf, Identity Exploration in World of Warcraft. Phenomenal read. It is on ResearchGate. You can get the full text PDF if it's something that you're interested in, but it does explore the sort of impact of virtual identity in a virtual world. And obviously that's relating to an MMORPG, which is somewhat different. The context is a little bit different, but I think that is, for a lot of people, especially in our sort of increasingly insular social context, a really great way to explore yourself is maybe if you don't have a physical forum to attend and experiment with your identity there, the online world, especially for a lot of people like myself who spent so much time on the internet in their sort of formative years, it is the place where you determine who you are, and you are influenced by so many factors which contribute to the person that you inevitably end up becoming. And so
That cat, I know we are at time. Do you wanna pull us out? Because I was gonna pull us out. Please pull us out. If they're all right.
This is time for Moth to step in and be like,
Yeah,
it's time to kick all these lovely people out of my
the moderator
house.
above the moderator is removing us from. We're being evicted from the
I
stream.
am evicting you all from my
That's good. I didn't know how to end this anyway.
There's a very important video that chat needs to get to that I'm getting constantly spammed by people being like, I need this in my face. So unfortunately, I have to cut you guys off, even though I was very invested in this conversation. Even though you couldn't see me, I was in the corner listening. I was in fact the Mothman
Lovely.
plushie that fell off Neil's bed.
Oh my god.
Very good. Well, I thank you guys all for joining us for this and for coming in and being so kind as to donate your time to Slender4Gender this year. And I hope we can have you guys back maybe in a year in future.
Please do.
But I do have a couple plugs I need to quickly read through.
Yep.
Just a handful of things. First of all, if you are not already watching Moonshot podcast, you should be. That's a character flaw. I wish I would start by discussing like what shows they have that are great, except literally you could just watch any of them. So I'll just read the blurb. Moonshot is a podcast network built on creative collaborations and far-out ideas, limited series, experimental actual plays, media critique and analysis, themed live streams, big charity events, and more. We're a place for indie stars to shine bright and play around. The majority of our current shows focus on deep, critical dives into media, from creating transformative fan work through tabletop role-playing games to summarizing, reviewing, and critiquing our favorite books, TV shows, etc. And of all of those, our lovely pal here, Marn, is on a ton of them. But Argonauts is the one you probably want to watch because it's the best show in ARGs. And Nick Nocturne, if you're fucking watching, step up your game because Marn's kicking your ass.
Whoa, you should also watch our Twitch very soon. Wink,
Ooh.
wink.
Hell yeah. Neil won't talk about Neil's work, but I sure as hell will. Luciania Historical Society is a fucking great ARG. It's got mixed media print work. It's got a giant pink monster. It's got seances. It's got automatic writing. And it's about to go into an even better arc than maybe the first arc. Certainly a incredibly high production arc. You should go check it out.
Yeah, I've been making ceramics.
Oh my god.
Oh.
I am so thrilled. This is the best news. I could talk about, I could probably spend an entire multiple entire interviews talking about Laura's contributions to ARGs and unfiction and immersive media and immersive design if I really wanted to. Instead, I will just read the plugs that were given to me, and so there is that. We have 2 books that you can get on raffle and also books you should just buy. One is Planning Your Escape, which and I will kick a link to Laura's website as well as the listing on there for the books in particular, which is a guide that explores both the history of the people who made escape rooms in art form and an immediate experience, as well as the play of it, as well as the design of them. In my opinion, and I may not be an academic historian of games anymore, but at one point it was a thing I was doing. It is the best written history of escape rooms, period, that you can read, and so you should. The other book, which I will not lie, I have not read, but I need to, is called Katamari Damacy. It is a series of interviews as well as a cultural and historical look at the impact and legacy of Katamari Damacy as a game. And so, again, go read. It sounds incredible. I'm going to be getting a copy after the event is over. Val, you were making Red Hat, which is, doesn't need any introduction. It's fucking incredible. And also, you've been releasing content all fucking week. And if you guys haven't been keeping up with that, you should be. Hal and Tim are continuing to do Archive Hornets. And I don't know, maybe another zines in the works? Maybe?
Who knows? Chance.
Who knows? All right. Well, with that, let's get off the stage so that we can move the show on the road.
Right.
Thank you guys so much.
Thank
Out of my
you.
house.
Yeah.
I'm going to switch you guys over to a lovely a thing by the storyteller, and then we're going to have a nice, lovely video by somebody else. So let me go ahead and get this set up. Give me 1 second, and then I'll say goodbye.
Cassian, Adair, Bruno, and Florian. Our wayfarers have gone far, from a mythic kingdom to Victorian England to the furthest reaches of the final frontier. What seemed like a routine mission, an adventure into the stars, soon resulted in peril amidst the cosmos. When we stared into the darkness stared back, and when we dared to venture out into it, we surrendered to its natural inhabitants, whether we knew that or not. However, for our wayfarers, this final mission meant more than that. Their minds and souls, trapped through whatever cosmic mechanism kept them tethered to the tall, faceless monster, repeated the cycle once more. Their lives echo again and again and again, and through your guidance, They were snuffed out once more, doomed to repeat the cycle for all of eternity. Perhaps you could have saved them. Perhaps you were beyond their timeline, their one salvation to alter fate itself. But it is no matter. With that, our fable has reached its end. I have told you their tale, and you have listened adequately. Perhaps our paths will cross again, and perhaps they will not. For now, remember, there are always more stories to tell about the tall, faceless monster, and there is no gate to tell them. Good night.
During a harmless game of Jackbox, a commitment was made. At 2.5K, it became more than a dream.
You then unlocked Ted Spector, marrying Twitch chat. So congratulations, you're all wedded.
And now, a week later, it's a reality. Seriously, it only took him a week to put this together. He finally committed to the bit. It's not like it was your wedding or anything.
Okay, we get it. We get it. That's enough.
And what a marriage it was.
What do you mean was?
You spent quality time together, met the family, and now all that's left to do is get a divorce.
Divorce.
They can hear you now. Say hi, Ted.
Hi, chat. My lovely husbands and wives and spouses.
Unfortunately, the fucking Reactive broke today. Thanks, Reactive. They don't even get to see my lovely face.
You don't get to see anyone's face.
I see the browser working in the browser, but of course, like, it's not gonna work because it's so mean to me. Maybe if I re-add it. Maybe it'll be nice to me if I'll re-add it. Hold on. Let me see. Where am I?
Let's give it a shot.
We'll give it a shot just while I'm here. Let's try to add
Yeah,
me
just
again.
while Mad Cat's working this out. Hello. Well, I was gonna say hello. Yeah, I can't say hello to my husbands
Still
and
not
wives
working.
and such. Still not working?
Nope.
Great.
They should get your lovely image of you. Hold on.
Yeah.
Let me find it. You sent it to me. There you are.
Uh-huh. Here I am. Look at me. Look at my face.
Hold on, I'm dragging you.
This
I
is
gotta
who you
save it. I
could've
gotta save it. I gotta save it. Hold on. I gotta save it so it's a good quality. Hold on. There you are. Let me perch you right on top of
Fixed.
Slenderman. There you go. There's Ted Spector.
There I am.
Here, I'll
You guys can keep whatever you want in the divorce, unless it's the Pokemon cards, because I'm keeping those. You guys do have to pay alimony, to the charity. So, you know, it's not all bad.
No, not my Pokemon cards.
Yeah, well, I'm keeping them. All right, I'm sorry, I'm keeping them. They're mine. This is what you signed up for when you explicitly agreed to marry me, even though half of you weren't aware that we were getting married.
Now we get divorced.
Now we get divorced.
All right.
Mm-hmm.
Take it away, Ted.
Well, hello. I am Ted Spector, as previously mentioned 100,000 times. And I am going to be hosting the closing ceremony for you lovely people tonight, even though you've divorced me and I'm still in a state of mourning, in all honesty. But it's fine, because we've achieved some amazing stuff. We are honored to have continued Valeria and Kay's vision for Slender4Gender from 2023. It's been such an amazing run. As of right now, we've raised over 7.7K for Trans Lifeline. Nearly $8,000. We're at 7.8K,
We
and
are
I
at
don't know numbers.
7.8K.
That's even closer. That's even closer. We're at 7.8K, which is even better. And our original goal we set out for was 7,000. So you guys have really helped us go above and beyond. Fucking incredible. You guys should all be patting yourselves on the back for it. Where am I in my script? I have a script, guys. I'm not. I can't speak from the heart. It's why we got divorced. Yeah, we raised all that money for Trans Lifeline, a charity that connects trans people to the community support and the resources that they need to survive. With everything going on right now in the US and around the world in general, it's even more crucial. So to have raised that much money, it's astounding. Even though we're wrapping things up here, you can still donate to our Tiltify for the next hour or until whenever the stream ends. At Tiltify, tiltify.com/Slender4Gender. This will be your very last chance to vote on the final chapter of the Choose Your Own Adventure story and buy raffle tickets for various goods. The raffle prizes that we still currently have up for grabs are a puzzle game bundle provided by Marn S., a sticker sheet and charm bundle provided by Tim from Archive Hornets, the Collect My Genders poster illustrated by Jackie Reynolds, a signed copy of Planning Your Escape donated by Laura E. Hall, who was just on the panel, a signed copy of Katamari Damacy, I believe is how you pronounce that, also donated by Laura E. Hall, 3 decks of the Alleyman Tarot by Seven Dane Peterson, custom art from Skylar, better known as Doomy Bat, who hangs around in chat all the time, custom art from Vinny, also known as Pasta Monsters, Lucas's mask from Act 1 of To Make Amends, created by Gray, 6 pages of the Marble Hornets entry 83 pages, which were provided by Tim Sutton, and last but certainly not least, we have Stan Frederick's jacket, which was provided by Valeria Santiago. So if any of that takes your fancy, this will be the last chance to buy raffle tickets and have a chance at getting those. Before we end everything, we want to extend our thanks to a whole bunch of people who we want to extend our thanks to a whole bunch of people, namely the audience right here and right now, and all of those who have joined us since we kicked everything off on June 10th. The Slenderverse really showed up this year, even though so many of us are struggling and experiencing our own troubles in such a world. But I think we've done pretty fucking well, and I think you guys have done amazingly too. Here's to our biggest donors. Our biggest one-time donors include Gorister, Evan Miles, Moths and Doves, Owen Gibson, Seth, Troy Wagner, and a donator we literally only know by the name of What the Heck is a Slender Man? Why is he skinny? No idea who that person is, but shout out to them. Our biggest cumulative donors include Kyle Wall, the runner of Hornetsversary, who brought in just over $1,500 with their audience. Thank you to the Hornetsversary audience. Sheena, holy shit, man. An arseload of money is all I can say, which is a scientific amount. Sheena has absolutely carried. The amount we have may not even be correct because we're pretty sure you've been giving from alternative accounts. We see you, and again, holy shit, Sheena sweep in chat. And DoomyBat, aka Skylar, donated $284, which is also holy shit. Thank you guys so much. Before we go, we also want to thank our organizers for the event. Beck, the creator of The Tooted Eye, Mad Cat, the creator of The Abbey Diaries, Alex Hera, the director of the Slenderverse documentary, Mangy, the creator of For Auld Lang Syne.
For Auld Lang Syne was taken.
For Auld Lang Syne. God damn it, I can never pronounce that one. Sorry, Mangy, I butchered it.
You did great.
Goes to the creator of Witness Truth, Leia, Rain, and yours truly, Ted Spector. Our advisors and organizers of the 2023 Slender4Gender are Kay and Valeria Santiago, who kept a watchful eye. Freelance artists are Ethan Hutchins and Truant. And finally, a special thanks to our moderator team. Al, Circle Hunter, Forrest, Paddington, Iris Prindle, Mad Cat, Play Scholar, Siren, and Trombone Knuckles. You will see a lot of these people next year when we run during 2026 as well, and we're going to be looking for more guests and team members, so make sure you keep an eye on our socials for updates and calls for help. From all the organizers, team members, and participants, thank you again to everyone for all of your contributions. This year has been harrowing, but also an absolute pleasure. I could not be happier with the state of the community right now. I think it's beautiful that we all came together for such a cause. And divorce or not, I still fucking love this community. I think you guys have done amazing stuff. Thank you for helping us reach our goal, for donating to a wonderful cause. It's been a blast and a pleasure and a privilege, quite frankly. And now, to close us out of Slender4Gender 2025, Valeria Santiago, the maker of Red Hat and one of the originators of this new charity tradition, is going to do a live reading of a new Slenderverse story. So keep your eyes and ears peeled, and that is all from me. So thank you very much again.
No, thank you, Ted.
Have a good night.
Have a good night, Ted. Goodbye,
Bye.
friend. Bye. All right, let's get Valeria in here. Get ready. I want everyone to get your water, get your popcorn, get ready for this. I'm going to move Valeria in. Hello. Hello. Go ahead and open up your camera and I'll grab you again. Let me do this real quick.
Hello.
Grab.
Am I going straight into the reading, or am I gonna?
That is up to you. They can hear you right now, though.
Oh, hi everybody. I have decisions to make in the next few seconds.
Let me just add your camera real quick so they can see your lovely face. Hold on. Oh no, I'm sharing all my secrets again. No, not my secrets. Oh no, my secrets. I can't believe you. All right, there we go. Let's put you right over here so everyone can see your lovely, lovely face. And let me grab your image, and let me grab your frame so we can make you nice and lovely. Hold on. Where are you? Where are you? Oh yes, there you are.
There this document.
All right. Put you right there. And
that's it.
I'll put you right there. And then, come on, frame. Be so nice to me. You know what? I'm not even gonna do it perfectly. Who cares?
Am I sideways? Am I sideways right now?
You are not sideways.
Okay. Phone didn't auto rotate.
You're perfectly fine. Okay, you're all. Whatever you need to do. Chat can see you. Chat can hear you. I'm here for you.
Hi everybody. Hello. So this is it. I just wanted to first of all say thank you all for contributing to Slender4Gender this past week and change. It's been absolutely wonderful to be even tangentially arm's length involved with this process. When me and Kay ran the first Slender4Gender event 2 years ago, I had not come out yet. I was still closeted, and as a little treat to myself, I dressed hyper femme during the one stream that we had, and I said that I was just, I don't know, dressed in drag or something, and I wasn't out, and I didn't want to yet. But I felt the love during that event. It was, I don't know, there was a lot of stuff that I had been hoping to, engage with that I wasn't ready to at the time. I was still living at home, and then a lot of you already know, but seeing this year Slender4Gender come together in this way with all of these lovely creators and all these lovely people that popped up, people that I've known for years, and all of you new folks, new creators, new fucking academics, the people I just sat with in that previous panel that were absolutely brilliant, that it's been lovely to see.
Val, you did
And
wonderful.
as I cannot even begin to sing your praises right now, Mad Cat. Yours and Rain's and just everybody involved with this, just absolutely stellar work, and could not be happier to see the ways in which all of you came together to do this. So I don't know. I have nothing else to really say except thank you. But I do also have something to read to all of you. We just went through with a, the previous segment was a very like academic space, and I do have a in-game academic paper to read you all. Fans of Stan Frederick and Red Hat alike, two series that I ran and am running, might really enjoy this, I think. It's a little long, so bear with me, but I have it right here in front of me, and I hope you guys enjoy it, and that this is a meaningful way to wrap up Slender4Gender this year. Thank you all again. Let's do this. The name of the paper is On the Paradox of Expertise with the Undefinable, an Examination of Concordia by Dr. W. As a general warning, this paper will contain brief discussions of drug abuse, violence, death, suicide. January 3rd, 2025. Introduction. I am feeling my age. Before my time, I would have had a multitude of contemporaries to divert my workflow to, despite the specificity of my field. Experts on either the paranormal or neurodivergence are always in abundance, separately. But for every Dr. Cairo, fluent in the language of the otherworldly, there is an equal blind spot in professionals like Witowski or Parker or Thurman, rest his soul. We all covered plenty of ground, and I'm glad of that. But I do quietly yearn for the days of Dr. James Corenthal and his contemporaries. Weeks like these would feel less taxing with more immediately comparable expertises. If only we had all started to practice together. Alas, harmony and experiential overlap has only really been attempted in this past year. This past month, in fact. It's about time. It is not often any of us are made to grapple with the problems of known versus unknown in tandem, to be fair. For years, the most instances of crossover between the tangible and the intangible, for me at least, have occurred fairly consistently between historically identifiable entities. If it is not the rake, it is the seed eater. If it is not the black-eyed children, it is the habit. If it is not the fourth world, it is the path of black leaves. And if all else fails, we circle neatly back to the being with the most and least continuity among them all. The man with no face. A majority of my patients are victims of, or conduits for, the latter, and his effects on the psyches he occupies. This creature, often clad in a suit and tie with bodily proportions that split our retinas irrationally, and the symptoms he creates or exacerbates do not always follow a clear trajectory. Hell, his physical appearance is even in flux, to the point where exclusively gendering him as he feels itself like a jagged can of patriarchal worms, and thus therapy alone would fail us in understanding him entirely. More on this later. From here, we recontextualize, paving a less certain road through worlds we have yet to comprehend, which we may then attempt to healthily process through. On this new road, in these undefined worlds, there are new rules, and what is left of our rigid social institutions that already stigmatize our rational illnesses and modes of identity fail us entirely. This is, in a way, our world as it exists. A victim of drug abuse has as much a journey to navigate in recovery as a prisoner of the dimension of Horatia. The faceless man can only do as much damage to the mind as your mother might to protect you from him. In any scenario, there is a break, and there is healing. Once you strip the surrounding nuances away, there is, at the very least, a basis for treatment, a chance for survival in shared experience. I have been contending with a full caseload since the summer of 2021. A lot of my patients are somewhat public-facing, at various intensities. What begins as records of experiences through recorded video or text posts of varying degrees of quality and prose is quickly known to garner online followings, outside witnesses to survivors' personal horrors. I historically preferred to work at arm's length with my patients, I care for and about them, but I did not let them know me beyond my simplest terms, if it can be helped. My name is Mrs. W. I have a teenage brother and a wife. I have worked as a parapsychologist since I myself was a teenager, and I'm originally from Brooklyn, New York. Put simply, the truth is for your friends, and secrets are for everyone else. All this to say, I often wondered how I can do more in my field. It appeared impossible to draft a cohesive document classifying these phenomena concretely, though many have tried, forcing these creatures that defy reason into paradoxical boxes of reason, a DSM-5 of sorts for the supernatural. And I never dared to attempt it. That mission appeared counter to the point of my own, to approach each solution, each victim, each story as a world unto itself. Harmony, to me, lies in our emotions, not our semantic knowledge. Empathy is the answer. So, I am writing this now in order to help carve doorways to that exact empathy, not knowledge. You will find very few cited sources here, if any. Our exchange will be one of trust, rather than one of proof. With secrets in the mix, this will feel unstable. I invite you to find comfort in that. I will be relaying elements of my vast casework to the general public with explicit permission from the handful of patients I reference, with the hope that we can all work less to see the words and more to read between them. With hope and luck, we can attempt to find some solace in one another as the chaotic friction between the fault lines beneath us continues at random. The events that inspired my decision to re-enter the public eye occurred years ago and last night, respectively. I will begin with the former. Part 1. Guests. It was the fall of 2020. As aforementioned, my caseload had suddenly spiked, and I found myself taking on triple the amount of survivors with very little support. The nights were long. I was in digital meetings practically every waking hour, save for weekends, and even then, I remained on call for emergencies. There was no chance I could accept even one more client. But one morning, that choice was not given, because I received not a call, nor email, nor voicemail, text, or letter. I received a visitor to my home. I remember the knocks at my bedroom door at 3 a.m, knocks which tore both me and my wife from sleep, knocks that were all but calm. Not as if to say, sorry to bother you, or this can wait. These were violent, demanding, terrified raps on wood. And so, before even managing to achieve full consciousness, I was already made aware of what had to have been an unfolding emergency. Maria and I shot up from our bed at full attention. Stan? My little brother. Standing stiffly at the threshold, holding the doorframe as if letting it go would unground him, cause him to vanish inexplicably. The way he was looking at me, unblinking, eyes wide. I wish I could make that image vanish from my psyche, but I'm convinced that it will be burned between it and my pupils forever after that night. A look of genuine, raw terror. One I thought I had seen countless times in patients, only to be proven wrong in the face of someone I am accustomed to, a face I know and love. Stan did not speak. His mouth hung ajar as if he hoped me or Maria could provide him the words he misplaced, as if begging to be fed a late-night snack of basic speech. But there was no sustenance on our end as well, just empty mouths and full minds. I could only think to push out another, slightly stronger Stan, and hope that this could encourage a sentence or phrase. We received in response a word. Outside. Outside. Someone was outside. I am not particularly fond of security cameras. We seldom use ours in earnest. In truth, we often keep our front door camera disabled so as to allow our neighbors, delivery drivers, and door-to-door advertisers the dignity of our physical presence, free of a hovering oversight. That night, I remember Maria scrambling to reconnect it, as the three of us stood huddled in the upstairs hallway, illuminated only by her phone screen. The login entered, enable pressed, the camera sprung to life, immediately blowing out Maria's phone speaker with a sound I will never forget. It was a sort of digital moan, of pain, of agony, or at the very least of fear. It only sounded for a brief second before totaling the speaker, so we were left with an audioless image, or part of one. The picture was, if you could fathom it, heavily distorted. The contrast was so intense that even the camera's automatic night vision was of very little help. All we could make out were the nebulous shapes, yes, shapes, standing before the door. These were not people, not traditionally. The entity closest to the lens did closely resemble a person, a young Latin woman, probably 20 years old, with straight black hair and thin glasses, but betrayed her appearance as fully human with an odd tint of blue that washed over her, and her only. As I studied her further, I had begun to realize the intense grain that I was seeing in the picture was not an artifact of the recording. It was on her skin. Standing behind her was something far more imposing. A silhouetted figure over a foot taller than her, with much less of an identifiable personhood. Its form was constantly shifting, with thin gaps that pulsated in straight lines across the body, like pulling white noise through a noodle press. It very literally felt, to me, like half of a man. The two stood motionless at the camera, facing the door. The blue woman's face was unmistakable in its emotion. Her brows raised diagonally upward, her chest rising and falling aggressively. The grains that danced along her surface could not hide the fact that she was shaking. This was fear, not malice. She needed help. Maria could see this realization in my face and almost instantly placed the phone into my hand, nodding. She always understood, despite being a victim of no irrational being. She simply knew what need looked like, as well as a determination to fill it. Stan, ever the child, perked up at the first sign of my work picking up, knowing that he was about to witness something out of this world. Innocence and bravery may be siphoned out of us as we age, but Stan will make it far before that cynicism ever finds him. And so, my support was established. It was time to give these creatures theirs. The following portion is a doorbell camera transcript. Hello? Nothing. Can you hear me? Are you all right? Still nothing. The figures do not move. Do you need help? A long pause, and then words flash on the phone screen saying, "Is this Serena White?" I suppose I should clarify here that I am fully aware of my reputation in small circles. It is how I acquired my patient base, after all. Serena White could once have been a secret, just for my friends. But that secret was taken from me, without my consent, due to a notable experience with one of the aforementioned influential survivors of the Faceless Man, who revealed extremely personal information about me for all to see. But the experience never really happened, and the information does not apply to this version of me, so little harm, minimal foul. I dread the aborted world in which I had the misfortune of myself and my own falling victim to this person. I wish him the best in his quiet eternity, and I am relieved we never met. Both can be true. This is relevant here, because this individual had inadvertently taught me much about a phenomenon adjacent to some of our known monsters, as he himself, as well as his violent cohort, had assumed parallel forms after death, only to cause more havoc in new, more destructive contexts. Put densely, quote, people that are taken or removed from this plane of existence by the previously identified entities are not always guaranteed direct passage to the other side. I theorize that, rarely, minuscule shreds of these people may remain on Earth in the form of a spirit that wanders or latches itself to another individual. The intention of these beings is irrelevant. Based on the person this affects, one might have very different aspirations as a wandering soul than another. That quote, of course, was from Evans Stan Frederick on Case Study Corruptulum. Here's another quote for you. Quote, the forms this echo may take appear binary in nature, though inconclusively. Every recorded physical example is of mind or of body. The former, corruptulum memoriam, left behind by the Slender Man, acts as a living memory, physicalizing itself much more closely with humanoid characteristics, though rarely of the human they originally separated from. The latter, corruptulum corporalis, a husk of power shredded from the self by the rake, a form of domination, with what remains of its body in constant kineticism, aggressive, incomplete, and disconnected. That quote was by Griffin Witowski from Corruptilarum, or The Duality of Being. Put simply, the monsters do not always get us in our entirety. Sometimes they leave traces, commonly known as corruptulum. There was no mistaking the two corruptilarum at my door, one of body, one of mind, one seeking my assistance, the other with intent I could not yet decipher. Who were they, originally? Did they know one another through their individual monsters, that being the faceless man and the feral respectively? And how did they find me? Doorbell camera transcript continued. Yes, this is Serena. Can we please come in? What are your names? Let us the fuck in. No, I'm sorry, Serena. My name is Anna. Don't lie to her. I'm not lying. Anna, okay? And you? Silence. Do you have a name? Drew. Drew. And Anna. It's good to meet you both. We came a long way to see you. We don't know how to fix it. Fix it? Make us a fucking person again, doctor. Silence. Hello? Hello? Drew. Anna. You've both been separated from yourselves. This state that you're in, it isn't reversible. Anna, you are what's left of Anna's mind, and Drew, you are what's left of Drew's body. Your monsters took the rest. There is no going back unless the two come for you again. Another long silence. Serena, they didn't take me. What? And then both speak at the same time and say, they just pulled me apart. Part 3, exceptions to rule. Sorry, part 2, exceptions to rule, excuse me. New discoveries are not uncommon in this field. In a way, they are essential, so as to give us new windows into each other's states of being. No two unhoused individuals experience economy identically. No two victims of violence react to that violence in kind, and no two queer Americans will approach their queer experience monolithically. There is only overlap, patterns. And up until this point, the pattern of corruptulum was rigid, exclusive, and one note. As far as I or any of my contemporaries were aware, this was not possible. People rarely escaped from these creatures. Their after images, even less so. And yet, here they were, an exception to the rule, standing at my door. Two halves of one human being, torn asunder by otherworldly creatures too powerful to quit and too ambivalent to share their kill. What did this mean? Was it possible to reform these echoes, halves of a whole, into a complete individual again? We appeared to have all the needed ingredients, as there were, as far as I was concerned, only two. The body and mind were hastily halved and kept separately intact. So, what was keeping them from rejoining? Surely, as extensions of the powers that split them, would they not have the means to do just that? I had admittedly spent the first hour after this discovery pacing the house, Stan and Maria following my stride, bemoaning every collected case study and dissertation on corruptulum I had compiled. Drew and Anna remained outside, the latter impressively patient, the former unyieldingly furious at my refusal to act. I agreed with Drew, to be clear. I was afraid of what I did not know, and ashamed at my hesitation to help in spite of that fear. My solace that night came from an unlikely source. Stan, now visibly concerned with my technical priority, stepped in front of me as I paced. I had been gripping a 16-page thesis on corruptulum memoria so hard that I could feel my fingernails through the holes I had punctured through all 16 pages. Stan placed his hands on mine and the papers, allowing my grip to slacken. Then, the absolute genius he is, Stan said something I missed in my obsession with the details. Why do they have different names if they're the same person? I cannot understate my embarrassment. Drew, short for Andrew, and Anna, feminized interpretation of Andrew. These were two halves of the same person, yes, but they were parts of the self that were at odds with one another. I am queer myself. I know so many transgender people, and by proxy about the struggles with gender dysphoria, the at odds nature of the disagreement between presentation and physicality in relation to social demand. And it just did not occur to me in that moment. My first tip-off should have been when Drew's vitriolically said, "Don't lie to her," when Anna introduced herself by name. So, we have a corruptulum of mind and memory, able to manifest herself as she truly is, and one of flesh and bone, unwilling to cooperate with that manifestation for whatever reason. In an ideal session or study, I would have more time to prep. I would call a litany of people that better specialize in transgender care to sit in on the encounter. I would reach out to my anonymous defected contact at the Department of Eschatological and Anomalous Threats to Homeland Security to see if I could get us an off-the-books, after-hours space for these entities to safely interact. And I would have hit the local dispensary for a quick hit, for the nerves. Hush, it helps. But Maria hastily reminded me that corruptulum are especially targeted by their respective monsters, and if I waited too long to provide the needed care, then all of us could end up in the middle of an unspeakable crossfire. So, I would be hosting a night of therapy with two of the same woman, with less than ideal expertise, in my living room. My family would be just upstairs. A muttered "fuck" was on my lips periodically that night, if I recall correctly. Part 3. Concordia. As stated previously, this document only sees the light of day with the explicit permissions of the patients and colleagues referenced in it. Up until this point, I have had full reign to relay the events of that night in the fall of 2020 in full, complete with transcripts and descriptive detail. The patient granted you, the reader, access to the knowledge of her existence. Despite the vulnerability even this most basic knowledge requires, she granted you her visibility. She did not grant you her story. I have been asked to leave out the intimate details of our therapy session in my relaying of the rest of that night. I was given the go-ahead to paint a picture here, still, but the patient insisted on a broader brush for the most difficult moments. She insisted on privacy. I am ashamed to admit that I pushed back at first. I was once again in conflict with the technical potential this story had for the future of understanding an entire avenue of paranormal occurrences. I was leaning more aggressively into the para half than the psychologist half of my expertise, and what little energy I exerted from the latter half went into trying to convince the patient that telling her story could be helpful for others like her, even inspirational. Anna then said something to me, something that I have actually been given explicit permission to share here. We both agreed that it is retroactively a statement. Before she said it, she informed me that many other transgender people will likely understand what she means. So this ought to serve my impulse to turn her into one of the many public-facing survivors in my care. That stung, admittedly. But she was right. And I took her at her word about the effect it would have. And so, she said her retroactive statement, a single solitary sentence, and the entire introduction of this paper was immediately, aggressively, fundamentally altered forever. Quote, I don't exist to convince them that I should. I just do. From here, we recontextualize, paving a less certain road through worlds we have yet to comprehend, which we may then attempt to healthily process through. On this new road, in these undefined worlds, there are new rules, and what is left of our rigid social institutions that already stigmatize our rational illnesses and modes of identity fail us entirely. I agreed to Anna's statement in place of a dry retelling, and, in fact, you are currently reading a third iteration of this study as a result of that fact. I've been hard at work at getting this right, with her guidance, and I've learned so much in that time. What I can tell you is this. The session culminated in what I have officially named Concordia, a rare phenomenon in which two surviving corruptularum of mind and body achieve a continuity after having previously been pulled out of sync by beings of conflicting intent. The results of Concordia, to start, have been promising. There were still instances of glitch in the two beings' synchronization, and that would of course take time to correct. Anna had graciously trusted me to continue our sessions, and I am happy to report that she is doing very well. She has started on hormone replacement therapy, and the last I heard from her, just last week, her name is now entirely Anna. Just in case you were wondering why I stopped mentioning Drew. She is there, she is just not Drew. The two work every day towards a greater understanding of each other. Witnessing their collaboration has been a privilege. This is everything that I was permitted to say. The truth is for your friends, and secrets are for everyone else. I am grateful to be considered a friend by Anna. In other worlds I was almost a victim within, I would never have met this beautiful person. I tell Anna this often, and she responds every time, almost somberly, likewise. It took me a while to realize exactly who and what she meant, but I understand now, and it overwhelms me to consider the weight of. I'm glad she's here, and she's still fighting in spite of the monsters. Conclusion. My experience with Anna followed me into the next few years of my practice. It made me think on my own queerness and the potential existence of other survivors, queer and trans, that never made it to my door. I had decided to expand my horizons further and engage with the lost or hidden communities I had never thought to seek out. I truly do not know what took me so long, but I'm here now. And in just under 5 years' time, I'm once again overjoyed to report that they are here too. They are visible, and their visibility is growing every day. It pains me to think that they were always there. To quote my now favorite song, I'm still frightened by those that don't see them. All that was left, that still had yet to occur to me, was whether I should make this expertise more accessible, and where my responsibilities lie in the formation and connection of this web of survivors. Last night, I received my answer in the form of another visitor to my front door. A homeless woman, a drifter, called Carmen Estrada, rang my doorbell in the early afternoon. She carried an overflowing backpack with a series of odd appendages, including a tan face mask and a bright red fedora hat. She appeared tired and peaceful, as if our meeting was just a pit stop in a perpetual journey. We sat down for coffee, and she told me her story about her experience with a version of the faceless man that did not exclusively present as a man, and her recent discovery of the existence of other survivors, me included, through a notebook of contacts gifted to her by one Evangeline Aylesworth. I could not help but laugh. Eva's wife, Patricia, is a patient of mine. Small world indeed. Carmen admitted that she had been silently dreading meeting me. She sooner confessed her love and horrors to her now boyfriend Ray just 2 weeks prior, and figured, while she was in town, she might as well bite the bullet and see about starting therapy. Carmen reminds me so much of Anna, a Latin transgender woman who sought out the ear of those with a shared experience. I had considered introducing them, but Carmen is of a simpler sensibility currently. She finds peace in mundanities, even amidst the supernatural forces that paint her life. Even her other world is small. But she would like that to change. And so, here she is. Anna will be there when she is ready. At the very least, they already have many core things in common. It was my consultation with Carmen Estrada that catapulted me into your periphery for the first time in ages. Our meeting was a reminder that we do not simply solve these horrors, create safeguards and close communities, and miraculously fix the world at large. No, the monsters are still ever present, and they take new and inventive forms that serve to cause and encourage harm. Our responsibilities to one another do not end with one victory. There are other victories to have. Carmen is ending her drift this year, returning here to New York, her home state, and will face some difficult adjustments after 2 years of aggressive movement. I will be working with her as she prepares for this second transition, her joking words, and I look forward to seeing her life take a shape that suits her, whatever that means. Concordia was a fascinating find, to be sure. But it must be stated that the discovery itself is less valuable than the nature of that discovery directly assisting in the saving of a life. If it never applies again for the rest of time, I will die grateful that it occurred even once. Ultimately, we are no closer to knowing anything substantial about the entities that paint our darkest dwellings, or lack thereof. We are finding one another and ourselves in the process, stumbling in the dark, arms outstretched with the hope that our hands will be taken in someone else's. I am an expert in the undefinable, a beautiful paradox of a profession, and I await less and less what we will answer alone, and more what we will ask together. Thank you all.
That was beautiful. Is there any other words you would like to say before we send you off? I'm crying right now.
I'm sorry. those are my 2 words. I'm sorry. I just that came from a place, like I've been trying to put into words for the past 10 plus years about why this community in particular means so much to me, both as a creative person and as a person, as a queer person, as a closeted trans person for the longest time. And every couple of years, I try to put it into words in different ways. It was video essays. Most recently, it was Redwood Hat, and now it was this document. And it never gets old to say. I just love the Slenderverse, and I just love the things that have come out of it. This event justified the existence of the Slenderverse 50 times over on its own. And that's not even to count the countless art, the countless friendships, the countless relationships, all these people that I know and love. And I'm grateful for it. And I'm grateful for all of you.
I'm grateful for you. Thank you so much, Val. I'm gonna go ahead and let you go before I get way too sappy about this. Because unfortunately,
thank you all so much.
As much as I would love to sit here forever, I have to play some
Absolutely.
commercials, and then it's time to retire.
All right. Thank you all again for coming out tonight, and thank you for donating and for making this event so wonderful. Love you all.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye.
Goodbye. All right, all. All right. So, that was the last segment we have for today. What's going to happen now is I'm going to play the rest of the lovely trailers we were given, and then at the end of it, I'm going to go ahead and retire the charity donations for this year. So, I'll go ahead and get those started. I hope everyone enjoys them, and then I'll see you as I retire it, and that'll be it for me.
How do you know this thing's working?
Yeah, it's working. See it right there.
Okay. All right. Thanks. I think I got it. Happy birthday, Riley. Happy birthday. Where's Robert? We're missing Robert. He's supposed to be down here already.
Let me go see if I can find him.
Yeah, can you go get him?
Robert. Robert!
He's never late. Never. Where's Howie? Oh, he'll be here, hon. He always shows up.
Do you believe in magic?
Fight back so we can have a cake!
You should.
I started a YouTube channel. Like I said, I was going to do a couple years ago. Soon I'll be important. I hope you're by my side once I am. Sorry.
Bullshit! You're the one that's always fucking stalking me, always outside my window, always at the grocery store conveniently at the same time as me, you're not buying anything!
We're not in Horatio anymore, Eli. You can't do that. You're doing the same shit that people who work for the tall fucker do.
I am not like that.
You stalked me!
Humans rewrite stories. They reshape memories until they fit in their hands.
This is your last chance. Take your camera and get the fuck out of my life.
Hi there. Thanks for attending this year's Slender4Gender charity livestream event. Do you remember the Slenderman 2018 movie? Well, what if it was voiced by these nerds instead? And we did that, all thanks to Mallory from Doors to Nowhere. Here are a couple snippets of what's to come.
You guys know Skibidi Toilet? Anybody?
Hey, I also like food.
No. I hope you're not messing around those interwebs. You know, they got those creepy pastas
Those
on
creepy
there or whatever.
pastas?
I love Slenderman.
How many leaves do you think I need to eat before I lose consciousness?
Oh god, it made me red!
No, it made me red!
I ain't happy. I'm feeling glad I got sunshine in a bag.
It's related to stick in the mud, needs to go.
Hey Autumn, it's me. I just wanted to check in and see how you're settling in down there. You know, but I figured I'd just, I mean, this whole deal, if you were having some kind of issue, I know, they're always there. Listen, this is the part where you pick up the phone because you need me. I can't do this anymore.
Alright, hold on, I'm gonna shut the door, okay? Because I'm pretty sure you can see this. I'm gonna get one of these. Since you're so short and can't. I'm just a bully. I'm just a most fucking bully. You in your place? Alright. Action.
Hello, whoever's watching this, if anyone is, you don't know who I am. And I intend to keep it that way.
I often find myself jealous of other people. Jealous of their ability to just get it right the first time. Like it just comes so naturally to some people. And the rest of us just have to play catch up with them. Or maybe it's just me, I don't know. But I am jealous.
As for the shape of this video record, I have no idea. We'll figure this out together, you know? It'll be fun. Let's see where it takes us.
Won't you lend your lungs to me? Mine are collapsing. Plant my feet and bitterly breathe up the time that's passing. Breath I'll take and breath I'll give, and pray the day's not poison. Stand among the ones who live in lonely indecision.
Whatever happens, I just need you all to know the real me. The real.
Yeah, I know this episode was supposed to be about a certain balding guy with a really good dress sense, but something's come to light that requires immediate attention. What is happening?
We just saw it.
Just say it. Just say the name. Troy, get the hell up now! Seriously, Troy, come on! He's gonna show up in a second. I can't stop filming. It's doing nothing. Well, what is the alternative? The hell is going on? Say it's not! Every school has its secrets. I'm Rob Parker. And I'm Troy Parker. And welcome to the dark, the strange, the mysterious West Observation High School.
Hey, Oli. You remember Halloween, right? Doing that like a weird thing. We're gonna do some urban exploration.
What did you just say to me? Did you just call me ugly?
Yeah.
That's how rude.
Now, if you can agree to the rules I've set in place, let's get into it a little bit, shall we? Well, let me turn on my light so you can actually see me. Alright. Hi. I'm Natalie. You might already know my name by now. I mean, considering you're watching this, I assume you've seen my name in that book. I understand wanting to build community, but think about it. You're creating a web. Think you're doing something better. Y'all think you're doing something that's actually going to fix everything. But I figured I would be the person to tell you how much your life can change for the better if you just really push yourself. You all have to stop making him.
Hi, I'm Ash. So, here's the situation. I woke up one day in this house, alone. No sun, no power, just darkness. I don't know how long it's been like this. A week, a month. Time's weird in the dark. If anyone's out there, if you find this, don't come looking for me. Why not show your face, Ash? I have a condition. If someone looks into my eyes, they die. Yeah, I know. Sounds like something you would find in a creepypasta. But come on. This was weird.
Hi, chat. All right. That does it for us here. I am going to the Tiltify right now to give you our final total. Our final total donated. We raised over the course of these, 2 weeks? $8,011.91 was our final total. Also, yes, please, thank you so much for everyone who donated. Their time, their energy, their money, their commercials, those are all wonderful. I had such a good time watching those. Like, each time I did it, it was just so nice. Alright, now I got to finish this off because I, unfortunately, have other things I need to do now. You all have other things you need to do now. I'm sure you're sick of us by now. I'm sure you're not sick of VTuber Slenderman, but again, thanks to Cairo for donating this. Thanks to absolutely everyone who helped with this. There's too many names to name off right now. This was wonderful. Again, I'm Madcat, they, them pronouns. Go watch the Abbey Diaries, and For Auld Lang Syne was taken if you'd like. We're gonna be doing some stuff with that, but watch everybody's series, please. Get ready for everything, and thank you so much. It was an honor. Have a wonderful day. I am officially hitting the button to retire the campaign. The campaign has been retired. You may no longer donate. Raffles will be out sometime next week, so be prepared for us to contact you for that, so we can get that to you and get everything done. So, thank you so much. I hope everyone has a wonderful night.